AEC Business, the construction industry's innovation and technology show.
Welcome back to the AEC Business Podcast, the construction industry's innovation and technology show. My name is Aarni Heiskanen. Today we're discussing the idea of centralized single source of truth to manage information on a construction project. Is it feasible or a pipe dream? Joining us are two leaders from Newforma, the company that provides project information management solutions for the AECO industries. Dave Wagner, Head of Product Marketing. Good to have you, Dave.
Hello, how are you? It's a pleasure to be with you today.
And Carl Veillette, Newforma's Chief Product Officer. It's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again.
But I'm especially excited to welcome Terry Jones, BIM Manager at CESO, who lives on the front lines of project information management every day, I imagine.
That happens very often, yes.
Okay. So thanks for joining us, gentlemen. The concept of the single source of truth has been around since the 1980s. And first we had centralized repositories for CAD files and other files. And then we used shared resources for BIM collaboration. And more recently, the Common Data Environment, or CDE. So we have dreamed of a one ring to rule them all. Are we finally there? Dave, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say we aren't. And at least in the sense that if we're looking at that single ring being a single vendor. A recent study came out that indicated that the average AECO firm is using between 1 and 200 different products today. And whether it's ERPs or CRMs or field tools or document management tools, the tools are enormous. Plus, when you look at it from the perspective of that, you have architectural needs and engineering needs and contractor needs. You have all these various needs. So assuming that you're going to find one solution that can be the best solution for all things, for all people, in my mind, it's a wonderful idea, but it's not likely to ever really come to fruition. The other issue that I see that you have with a single source of truth specifically is that by definition, it is a single place you're being asked to put your data. And for certain things, maybe for instance, documents, that may be a very realistic situation. But when you're talking about other forms of data like emails and chats, the likelihood that a very busy person like Terry is going to be able to consistently take his time and all of his team's time to take all that information and put it into that single source is just, in my mind, it's just not what people are going to spend their time doing. So the real goal, that ring to me, is not necessarily a single provider, but is a single structure, a place where you can find the information you're looking for, but it essentially is a ring around what you consider to be your best in breed solutions.
Mm-hmm. Well, Terry, how do you feel about this question?
I completely agree with David's perspective here. Having dealt with, and I've been in the architectural industry for 30 years. So I went from hand drafting to AutoCAD to Revit to what's in the future now, right? And we are quickly moving into that very digital age. And along that path, our information has been stored in various places. And again, we use platforms like Microsoft Office, right? That has all of our Excel and spreadsheet, all that kind of data, the administrative data, if you will. And then we have our project, our virtual design data in Revit and AutoCAD and whatever other program that you happen to be using. And as David noted, we have different tools for different jobs. They're all different digital things. The place where we store the digital data is often in a, I'm going to call it a common environment, whether that's a local server or cloud storage. But we also have other places. Obviously, Office is its own thing. It's out there in the cloud, Office 365. We have internal SharePoint drives. We have other places. Obviously, Microsoft Teams is very, very commonly used these days because of a lot of work from home environments, and we have extended Teams. We have 16 offices throughout the United States, and so in order for us to share staff resources and collaborate on things, we spend a lot of time in online meetings and collaboration, and even with GCs in general. A lot of that is online. And so we just don't have all of our data in one place, but having a place to view that data from a single source, the ring, as David put it, that is of great value. Instead of having to open 5 boxes, I can now look through one window and see all my boxes.
Carl, do you have something to add?
Yeah. I think what Dave and Theory said, it makes absolute sense. If I take kind of a different take at it, right? I'm going to talk about the nature of humans, right, and change management here a little bit, right? Because humans it's just the nature of how we think, right? We're always going to take the path of less resistance, right? So you're on a project. There is a tool for chatting. There is a tool for email, right? But you can't really expect that people will just go and their day-to-day, like they're on a project, it's rush, right? You can't expect them to go and put the data in a single platform and change the way they work, right? So I think for me, thinking about a single source of truth is wrong from that perspective of trying to force people into using a single platform, change their behavior, and also just from a technology standpoint, right? Like you're kind of like you're trying to be competitive in this space. There is best in class tools for various type of activities on the project, right? So why would you have like a single platform that's kind of average everything, and take the risk of not being competitive in the workplace, right? So I think like a strong believer that people should be able to choose the tool that makes them more efficient on the project for the task they have to perform. But think about the single source of truth instead of as a single view of information, right? So you don't have to change the way people work. They can still use their best-in-class solutions, right? But think about an aggregated kind of view of the information to help you take decision, and work with the latest data, not have to struggle, trying to figure out, which version is the best version of the information, right? So that's kind of like the vision we're going after with Newforma, right?
I imagine, Terry, that your company has, as you said, you're a multidisciplinary company with several offices and people collaborating internally, but also externally. Isn't that another dimension that doesn't make this easier?
Very much so. Yeah. So, we deal with a lot of general contractors and clients, and they all have their own place to store information about the project. And some of them want us to use their space because, well, they want their records, we want our records, right? And so, we have to communicate and collaborate on a large scale. And so you're correct. It's not only local storage spaces, it's external spaces that deal with clients and consultants and other engineers outside of our own company, which
Yeah.
makes it there's a plethora of information out there, and trying to corral all that and get a handle on it for record keeping purposes as well as for collaboration purposes is a real challenge.
Mm. But if you think about these challenges, what does it mean for the project? I would imagine that we have a lot of waste in terms of time and also money. What are your thoughts, David?
So I think talking a little about about what Terry just mentioned is this interesting dilemma that we have in this AECO world. If you look at almost every other industry, take manufacturing, which has some level of similarities. In manufacturing, the primary manufacturer, the airplane maker, the car maker, they're leading the charge. They're essentially figuring out what solutions are going to be used and telling everybody else how they're going to operate. As a consequence, they can create some efficiencies, some economies of scale, some consistency, those standards on how things work. Our industry has grown up being very different. Just as Terry mentioned, is that each system, each group, to a certain degree, uses their own systems, has their own sort of way they do things, and then there's this need to try to figure out how all these people are going to collaborate and talk together. Since 2010, that famous study came out and said that our industry was the second least efficient that's out there, and I firmly believe a lot of that isn't a desire. It's not we don't have the right people to understand the technology. It's this trying to get everyone to communicate together, and when they don't, to your question, what you're going to find is mismatches in communication, wrong versions being sent around, decisions that are stuck in people's inboxes because that's the only way they can communicate. Information missing context in terms of how it fits in to the larger project, missing audit trails that really give you a feel for how something is transpired across all the different elements on the project, handover not being successfully communicated between one group and another. Because of this sort of lack of touch point between all these different systems, we are sort of driven by having to deal with these problems.
Yes, but our industry is project based, so we are, and every project is a little bit different, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
that's also a challenge because at least here in Finland, it seems that every project has a different set of teams and companies depending on the client. So it doesn't make it easier. The environment start solving this problem. What is if we cannot say that we want to choose just one vendor who has all the answers, so how can we move on?
I guess for me, it's about trying to make it repeatable, right? And as you mentioned, every project is different, not just because of the design, the nature of the project, but because the teams that are brought together are different, right? So they have to learn how to collaborate with one another. And I think the tech stack of the project is also different, right? So in project, you're gonna have a firm that may be using certain tools for the design phase. The general contractor is gonna be brought over with their own tools, right? And so you know the idea of trying to make it repeatable is to create processes, right? And those processes require connectors to be efficient and repeatable, right? So, a big part of what we do with Newforma, right? We're trying to create connections with other platforms so that somehow you can make your workflows repeatable, project to project as the tools change, right? So that's part of like the vision of being agnostic in a way that we're kind of it's funny, I would say we're kind of Switzerland to construction in a way, right? Because we're playing nice with all the various technologies deployed on the project, right? So it helps move information from point A to point B. And to David's point, everything's about communication these days. So if you can make those communications more efficient, right? It's we argue like what makes a good project is the 3C, right? Coordination, collaboration, communication, right? So those are the three things that matter the most, right? So if you get one of those wrong, it's most likely the project's going to derail. So again, that all comes down to information flow on the project, and connectors come a long way, to make sure that information is shared without barriers, right? And repeatable across project, so that's I would say my take on this.
Okay. So Terry, I I imagine that your company uses Newforma. So can you explain us how do you use it?
So let me preface it by saying I started using Newforma Project Center in 2010 at a different company. And that was an epiphany because I went from tracking things by hand and manually in the spreadsheets and information on all these different platforms, as we've discussed, to all of a sudden, all my project data, I was looking through a single window and I could find all the things, all my CA process, RFIs and submittals and things were being tracked. My emails were no longer just in my inbox. They were now associated with a project, and other people on my project team could see those. Here at CESO, we transitioned to Newforma Connect about 2 years ago now, because again, our platform changed, right? We were on an internal server system, and it was a platform that was multiple locations, so it sort of looked like we had one, but we were moving away from those local servers and local hardware to a virtual cloud environment entirely. As a part of that, it necessitated moving from Newforma Project Center to Newforma Connect. And it's actually been kind of a game changer in many aspects because shortly after the pandemic, everything sort of went to a work from home, work from the office, part-time kind of thing. And so we had a whole lot of extended teams, and being able to now work in a virtual cloud environment and still get to all of our data and still process all of our information. Newforma Connect being now a virtual cloud-based product made that possible. And it actually made it even simpler for us to integrate all of those processes into the Connect environment, because Connect, you use the words play nice, but I like the term play nice in the sandbox. But Connect works with all of the tools that we have to work with. It connects to the Autodesk Construction Cloud. It has a Procore connector. So the GC wants us to use Procore to process contract administration, RFI submittals, things like that. It has a connector to make that easy. And Carl had mentioned users don't want to change how they do their stuff. They don't like change, and they want it to be as easy as possible to get things working. And we found that in general, for example, attaching emails as a part of the project data is a huge deal. It's one of Newforma's strengths for ages. Nothing else really does a great job of that. And Connect has actually made that even easier. It's got some built-in AI that sort of identifies what project it's supposed to go to, and it pulls things up for you very quickly. And you can just your normal email process. It's got a plug-in in Outlook, and it just filters it into the Newforma database. And so now the entire extended project team can go into the Connect project and see everything that was processed email-wise related to that project, not just their information, but everybody's information. Similarly, with it maps itself to an Autodesk Construction Cloud project folder. So all the file and storage information is available there. We're actually adopting another platform called Ignite to replace SharePoint, and it will map to that. So it plays nice with all of our friends, all the people that we work with on a daily basis, and it sort of coordinates it into one place where now I can go there and find all my things without having to go to each individual platform, or worse, having it on somebody's desktop or in their inbox, where if that person leaves the process, now that handover, as I think David mentioned, is an issue, right? Because the new people coming in don't know anything about the project per se. Now you've got to feed them all this information. If they have this Connect window to look through, now everything, all the history of that project, all the data of that project is right there in one location. They don't have to know how many platforms we were using, how many pieces of software. It's all visible right there.
Well, that sounds really a step forward. David or Carl, since there are so many, let's say, integrations and things like that, what does the implementation of Newforma Connect look like? How long does it take, and what's included?
So I think, we take a lot of pride in spending a lot of time on user experience with Connect, right? So I guess, Terry, you would testimony, because you've been through the transition, right? So we're always like trying to put the user at the center of our universe, right? So when we develop experiences, we're trying to dumb it down, the KISS kind of thing, keep it simple, stupid, right? So always trying to get remove steps in the process to configure things. So we've got some customers that get up and running within a day. Usually the feedback we get is the platform is intuitive enough so that it doesn't put a lot of burden on the training aspect. So of course, this is something we offer to our customer success team. We assist the customers. We don't just activate licenses and leave it up to them to figure it out, right? But we've seen enough people being very successful with deploying the platform at scale. Because of the user friendliness of the platform, just the fact that this is web based, there's no installation required. You don't actually have to mess with IT and try to figure out how to deploy something on-prem or install something on everybody's desktop, right? So it's a browser tab, it's in their face. It's expected today that modern applications have web interface, right? So it's just the nature of the world we live in, right? With bank accounts and such, right? So it makes it also accessible everywhere on any devices, on the mobile app, right? So the fact that it can always be accessible, right, comes a long way also in making sure that adoption happens. And so a few other tricks, like the connection with ERP systems and things like that also helps with onboarding. So the users don't have to create additional accounts, it just flows naturally from their Microsoft environment, for instance, right? So again, removing some steps in the deployment process and making sure that the users can get their hands on the project activity and the features as fast as possible.
Um, David, since you're a marketing guy, I think that marketing is often trying to paint a picture of the vision of the future of the customer. What kind of vision are you selling?
So what we're really focusing on is, let me take a step back first. And Terry did an amazing job of very eloquently describing what this working all friendly, working together really provides. But from a vision perspective, and sometimes from a very tangible perspective, the question I frequently get asked is, well, but prove it to me. What is it really doing for me? How can I objectify this? Don't put it just in subjective terms. So the conversation I'll have with a customer at the very start is asking them, for you and your team, when a new task comes along, a new problem, something else you have to solve, how much time do you spend just gathering the information you need before you even start your work? And I'd love to hear what, Terry's response is, pre-Newforma, but I almost always hear at least 20% of my day is just spent searching for info. Industry studies have told us sometimes it's as high as 30 or even 40% of someone's day is doing that. Well, when you have a solution, the way both Carl and Terry have described, and you can find that information now, and you're only spending maybe 5 or 4 or even 3% of your day, you're getting back hours, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 hours a week to spend more time on actually doing what you're paid to do, to create new work, create new revenue for your company. Go home after 8 hours instead of 10 hours every day. And it brings a very tangible benefit to what you're bringing. Also, the other side to it that we focus a lot on is think of it as also a level of project insurance. Much like home insurance or car insurance, we all buy it. None of us like paying for it, but holy cow, when you need it, you are so glad you have it. And having this environment where you have everything connected, that single pane of glass that Terry described, that single view into your data, so that when things do start to go sideways or really go wrong, that you have that flexibility to find the information you need quickly and accurately and not have to dig through emails and contact the general contractor to see if they have the data and trying to pull all that stuff together. That gives you that sense of well-being, that sense that you're not putting yourselves in a difficult situation. You can actually sleep better at night. So, and you can objectify that. You can actually quantify the value of that security that you get. So, coming back to your original question, what is our vision? Our vision is to create an environment that reduce the risk and make sure that people are making the quickest, most accurate decisions possible to create the best products possible that they can.
There is no discussion nowadays where somebody is not mentioning AI, and Terry already mentioned, I think. So, what is your take on AI? How do you see it regarding information management? What kind of future do you see, and the role that it will play in construction in the future? Terry, do you have any ideas already?
AI has been a hot topic for the last 10 years. And more recently, it is a buzzword that a lot of people throw about in a very generic sense. The practicality is that AI's primary benefit to our industry at present is its ability to dig through tons of information and summarize things for us. It's a glorified database searcher to some degree. And being able to do that is really valuable because, as David mentioned, saving time and looking for information is half our battle. We're constantly looking for things. We're trying to get it back, and AI is going to help us do that. I mentioned it in context of filing emails. So the AI anticipates, based upon the text, the information in the email, which project it belongs to, and automatically just files it for you. It saves me, as one of my colleagues likes to say, anytime I can save clicks, then I'm saving time, and that's beneficial, right? So AI is helping us do that. Is AI designing buildings? No. Is it helping us make informed decisions? Yes. Because again, it can analyze tons of information, which would take a human being hours, possibly days, and bring back information and answers in seconds. On the other side of that, you have to know what you're looking for and be able to assess what the AI tool is feeding you to see if it's dog food or it's actually something you really want to eat, right? Because AI is only as smart as the information being fed to it. And so you gotta you've got to be a little judicious. You do have to know what you want, what is a valid answer, and understand how to assess that versus just taking for granted what you read on the internet just isn't always true, right? And the same thing is with AI. And AI doesn't differentiate. It's not trying to lie to you. It's just gathering all the information that it's found and regurgitating it. Well, is that really the right thing? Maybe, maybe not. But in our industry, AI is just revolutionizing the way that we're doing things because it is helping us to automate iterative and repetitive tasks. It's helping us to search massive amounts of data and come to conclusions faster, which makes us more efficient and saves us time.
Yes, and I also imagine that having access to information the way that Newforma is providing is also beneficial for AI as well. But do you have,
Absolutely.
yeah, David, Carl, do you have what is your take on AI and specifically regarding your products and services?
Yeah, I think we're in an industry that's kind of ready for disruption, but at the same time, it's not, right? So let me explain that a little bit. So I guess the AI is not going to replace humans in our space anytime soon because we live in an industry that's highly regulated, right? To start with. So those regulations take a lot of time to change, right? So as a result, there is I'd say a high degree of responsibility, when you're an architect or an engineer on a project and you're stamping construction documents, you're actually responsible for what's going to happen. If the building falls down the road, it's not going to be his AI fault, right? So those regulations are in place to, those controls we send on the projects are in place to avoid disaster, right, like that, right? So unfortunately, the trust factor with AI is not there yet in the industry. A lot of people are skeptic about, the sources that of the information AI provide, and so anybody that can actually create an AI that is trustable 100%, it's probably on the right track. But it's not the case just yet, right? So it might not be the technology itself, but might be the implementation of it, right? So I think until we solve that piece of the puzzle, right, there are some great use cases for AI to augment humans, but not to replace humans, right? And the way we've been designing our AI features and Newforma is a human in the loop, right? So, final actions that Terry mentioned are smart email filing, right? This is great. It's saving a lot of time. It's avoiding omissions. Emails now get filed into complete project record, right? So it's funny, you guys, I was crunching statistics the other day and we found out that only 44% of emails get filed. And I was talking about lack of discipline, right? Well, that's the case of exactly that. So when you're missing those evidences and projects, you're actually exposing yourself for litigation, right? Because when you go in court and you can find a decision that's been made in an email or a drawing that's been sent to you, right? Then this is risk you're taking for your organization, right? So again, the AI helps with this. Now you got 95% of emails filed because we're going through the inbox, we're scanning, we're finding the emails if we're missed. They land in the project. People can make informed decisions because now they can find information, right? They make a search. They can find the decision that's been there, that's been made a week ago. Someone's on vacation, right? They have to wait until the person come back to find the information, right? It creates delays on the schedule. Who's responsible for that, right? So those are some practical examples of what communications can create on the project, and how AI can help. But again, it is up for the project stakeholders to perform the final actions, be responsible for the decisions they make, right? So we're again promoters of human in the loop, kind of like workflows for the time being. Things might change in the future, but this is where we stand.
So, in other words, good technology is good when you don't notice it. That it kind of yeah, it works in the
That's a
background.
good statement. Yeah.
Yeah.
The best technology is the one you don't notice. Yeah.
Yeah. uh, so maybe my last question would be about the future. How do you see your role and work changing in the near future? Because I think that everybody's talking about data and how important it will be, and you talked about transparency and audit trails and things like that. But what might be the biggest change that you see in the, let's say, next 3 years, David?
So I think it ties into a little bit of the previous conversation. What's always interesting was when you talk to software vendors, it's AI, AI, AI. But when you talk to actual customers, and Terry, brought this home just in his previous answer, it's all about the data. And one of the things that technology has brought us is a logarithmic increase in the amount of data we are capturing. The problem is the vast majority of that data is still unstructured and isn't used. So where I see the biggest change coming is as we continue to capture more and more data, actually being able to use that data effectively and efficiently to make teams more efficient, to make those better decisions. Because as Carl mentioned, ultimately with using that data, we're not trying to replace the decisions that are being made by the professionals. However, what we can do is help them make the better decisions. So I like to think of where we're going, with, especially with AI and data, is bringing in the best intern you've ever had, also the lowest maintenance intern you've ever had, someone that you can actually assign those tasks to bring forth and give you indications of what maybe you could do, something that maybe you forgot, something that could be suggested that someone else is doing you should consider, and really helping you fine tune the information that's out there and pulling it all together so people can do their jobs more effectively and more efficiently in the future.
Terry, how do you see your work changing in the next couple of years?
We are exploring the value of the AI data analysis. In fact, we have a software development team internally working on figuring out how to not only utilize the information, but how to collect it. David mentioned it's in various forms and it's not always consistent. And that's part of the problem, because you need that common structure to make it efficient. And so internally, we struggle a little bit with non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, in that we can't use public AI search engines because we can't put client data out there. So everything we do has to be internal. It has to be locked down. And even to some point, we struggle because sometimes there's been a few cases where it has to be proprietary information only to the internal team, not to the company, but only to the internal team. And so we have to be very, very careful how we access the data and who we make it available to. And AI is all about accessing data. And so that's our struggle for the future is, and we want to do that because analyzing that gross amount of data and getting valuable information back is extremely important. I'll give you a simple example. I assume you all shop on Amazon Prime, right? You go and you click on a product and there's a little summary there from all the customer feedback from an AI that went through everybody's feedback and says, most customers thought this was a piece of crap, don't buy it, or whatever it says, right? But it instead of me going through the little comments and deciding, did it get a 4-star or a 5-star or a 3.5-star, and what does that really mean? Now I get a little summary. Now, again, that's based upon the feedback, but okay, it saves me time to help me make decisions quicker. And so the same is very applicable in the architectural industry. If I have internal processes and I can analyze the documents that identify the process and determine that there's a better path forward, or here's a problem that we can work on in our QA/QC process. Here's a common error that the teams are making. We can address that in mass, and now we've saved thousands of hours of time because the QA team, the QC team isn't marking up the same thing over and over again because we figured out that everybody's making the same mistake. We're going to fix it, right? And so that's our challenge. That's where we are working towards for our future, is finding the appropriate data, finding an analysis, and then a way to apply that to our processes to make us more efficient in the future.
Mhm. Carl, something you said about that you now know exactly how many emails are archived or categorized, or so. So isn't this now this is great, because previously we didn't have any data on the behavior of people. And now we have. Maybe that's something that also what you're doing is helping us understand how we actually behave, and also be base our decisions on data, and not just what we believe to be true.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think we're we're moving into a data intensive future. And I think, the firms that would be successful in the future are going to be the ones that consider knowledge as an asset, right? And seems easy when you say it fast, but collecting knowledge is not an easy task, right? Because it lives in decisions we've made, behavior of people on projects, right? It digs into recurring patterns that we create, when delivering projects. But I say that the firms that are going to be successful are going to be the ones that see that data as knowledge, right? Because you think about the challenges the industry is facing today, right? Labor shortages, right? Like there is an increasing amount of senior veterans that are retiring. They disappear with their knowledge, their know-how, the hard-won information and data that you've generated on previous projects that could be leveraged for training new staff, for instance, right? And I think everybody can relate to that. When you're training new staff, you're actually not spending billable hours on projects, right? So you're maybe missing or losing money on the table for new projects that you could go after, right? So the ability to collect that information, crunch it, and then use it as an asset to help you alleviate the issues of labor shortages is going to be key in the future, right? And I think, it's easy for people that are not looking at AI as a solution for those things to get overwhelmed with data. I said we're moving into a data intensive future. Look at the amount of data, the amount of tools we're using right now. Look at the inefficiencies that this is causing for the industry. Look at the index of productivity in construction. It's kind of strange that it's not going up as fast as we are implementing technologies. Guess what? They're not talking to one another, right? So how can we better leverage, crunch the data we already have, the knowledge that we collected over the years, and use those insights as ways to better onboard our staff, give them hints and insights as they deliver the project on certain activities that they're facing for the first time, right? So I think the firms that start to look into this are going to be the ones that are going to make a leap in the future.
All right. I think this has been a fantastic discussion, but I think I'll let you go now. And thanks, Terry, Dave, and Carl, for sharing your insights. And let's talk again soon.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate you having us.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast and visit aec-business.com, the award-winning blog, for more news and stories.